200 years ago, this very night, at this very hour, a mighty battle was taking place on this very ground. The Battle of Lundy's Lane was not only the bloodiest battle of the War of 1812, but was also an epic, significant event in Canadian history. Let's imagine, for just a few moments, that we are standing on this very same spot, although invisible, exactly 200 years ago today at about 7 o'clock in the evening. What a sight we behold. Several thousand British and Canadian soldiers under the command of Lieutenant General Gordon Drummond are in position in a long, slightly curving line extending from just beyond what is now Drummond Road, across the hill back here then, now called Drummond Hill, along Lundy's Lane, and partway down what we now know as Ferry Street. Having received intelligence only a short time earlier that a large contingent of American soldiers is coming this way from Chippewa, Drummond has set up his artillery on the top of the hill, facing, as are his soldiers, to the southeast, that is, towards the Falls View area. Those American forces, as we can see, have just arrived here, having marched along the Portage Road from their camp at Chippewa. They are taken by surprise, not expecting to see the British here, especially in such large numbers and especially in such a very strong defensive position. Most of the American soldiers at this moment are members of Brigadier General Winfield Scott's 1st Brigade, about 1,000 strong. Scott immediately sends word to his commander, Major General Jacob Brown, back at Chippewa, to bring up reinforcements. Drummond has also sent for reinforcements. Near the top of the hill is a little log church used by various denominations. And besides the church is a small cemetery that was established in 1799. Yes, even in 1814, there was already a cemetery here. The battle begins about 7:15 when the British artillery opens fire on Scott's men just beyond the bottom of the hill. What follows is a no-holds-barred, bloody, brutal battle that lasted nearly 5 hours. Much of the fighting, therefore, took place after dark, a rare occurrence in 19th century warfare. At the height of the battle, a total of some 6,000 men were involved in an area no larger than 3 football fields. The Americans had approximately 2,700 men, the British and Canadians 3,600. Now, as we mentioned, at the beginning of the battle, the British occupied the top of the hill over here where their artillery pieces had been placed. As a result, that was the position the Americans had to capture. For the first few hours, in spite of repeated attempts, they were unsuccessful and sustained heavy losses. Then, shortly after 9 o'clock, Brown ordered Colonel James Miller, who commanded the U.S. 21st Infantry, to storm the hill and take the British guns. Miller responded, "I'll try, sir." Under the cover of darkness, Miller and his men climbed the southeast side of the hill. They got to within about 100 feet of the British artillery without being detected. At that point, there was a split rail fence enclosing the cemetery. Miller ordered his men to rest their rifles on that fence, take careful aim, fire, and then charge. This was done, and the artillery quickly captured. Miller's 3-word response to Brown became the most famous words of the battle. "I'll try, sir." It is now the motto of the 5th Infantry Regiment, U.S. Army, the modern descendant of the 21st Infantry back in 1814. Following Miller's successful capture of the British artillery, Drummond and his men were forced down the north side of the hill to the general area where Coronation Park and just beyond Coronation Park is now. Then, beginning around 10 p.m., Drummond led the first of what would be 3 massive assaults to try and regain his lost artillery on top of the hill. Even though there was a bright moon that night, the combination of darkness and a thick cloud of powder smoke made it very difficult to see any distance. As a result, it was often impossible for the soldiers to distinguish friend from foe in the heavily congested area around the top of the hill where so much hand-to-hand fighting took place. As one of the survivors later commented, more desperate fighting has rarely been known. The noise of the battle was extraordinary. An American officer later wrote how he had, quote, never heard anything equal to it. A continual roar of cannon, bursting bombs, skyrockets, and musketry, and shouts on one side or the other. With each one of Drummond's assaults on the hill, the fighting was vicious, as desperate men shot, stabbed, and clubbed each other. Each time, however, Drummond was forced to retreat. After the third time, his men could do no more, nor could the Americans. So it was, around midnight, with both sides having fought each other to a standstill and completely exhausted, the Americans withdrew along the portage road to their camp at Chippewa. However, they left behind all but one of the captured British guns, allowing Drummond, to his pleasure and surprise, to repossess them and the field the following morning. As dawn broke that morning, July 26th, it revealed a gruesome sight on this ground. An eyewitness described the scene here as nothing short of absolute carnage. Carnage, with dead bodies in some spots piled 3 deep, hundreds of wounded moaning or screaming in pain, while around the hill were the carcasses of 60 or 70 dead horses. Human casualties were very high, with both sides losing around 850 men killed, wounded, or missing in action. Due to the heat of the day and time constraints, many of the dead were burned in several huge funeral pyres. From a tactical standpoint, the Battle of Lundy's Lane can be considered a draw. Strategically, however, it was a British-Canadian victory in that the battle ended the war's last major American advance into Canada. Now, 200 years later, the sounds of that battle have long since faded away. The surviving soldiers have long since departed. The scars of battle on this ground have healed, and the rains of 2 centuries have washed away the blood that was spilled here. Nevertheless, while these things are gone, we must never forget what happened here, and always honor those from all nations, Americans, Canadians, First Nations, British, whose courage and patriotism were put to the ultimate test on this now hallowed ground. And in particular, honor those who paid the supreme sacrifice. I've always admired this observation about the Battle of Lundy's Lane that was included in a speech presented on this very site back on July 25th, 1914, the 100th anniversary of the battle. The speaker was Peter Porter of Niagara Falls, New York, whose grandfather had fought here in 1814. Porter emphasized the fierceness of the struggle here and how it was fought very close to one of nature's grandest creations, the Falls of Niagara. He noted, "Mightier armies have met in conflict on fields of great renown, but a fiercer struggle in proportion to the numbers engaged, a severer trial of discipline, a greater test of patriotic bravery, a battle more closely associated with the beautiful in nature, the world has never